Please like and subscribe. Elijah waited as the sky turned gray. He watched the faces pass, hoping to see his mother return. But she didn't. Hunger settled in. Fear crept closer. The world felt too big, too fast, and he felt invisible. Until she came. An elderly woman, dressed in white linen and gold bangles, paused in front of him. Her eyes were kind. "Where's your mama, little one?" she asked softly. Elijah said nothing. She knelt beside him. "My name is Mary," she whispered. "You're safe now." Mary gently scooped Elijah into her arms. He didn't resist. For the first time in hours, he felt warmth, not just from her touch, but from her presence. Her perfume smelled like jasmine and hope. She walked with a firm, elegant step, her gold bangles softly jingling as they moved through the emptying market. Mary lived in a large, cream-colored house on a quiet hill overlooking the town. She had no children of her own. Her husband had passed away 10 years ago, and she'd spent most of her days volunteering and gardening. But deep inside, she had always longed for someone to love, someone to call her own. She called her helper, Claudine, as soon as they entered. "Prepare a warm bath and food. We have a guest." Elijah sat on a soft cushion while Claudine gently wiped his face. Mary returned with a set of clean pajamas and knelt beside him again. "Would you like to stay here with me?" she asked gently. Elijah looked at her, his eyes wide with disbelief. No one had ever asked him that. He nodded slowly. Mary smiled and kissed his forehead. Then it settled. That night, Elijah slept in a warm bed for the first time in his life. He held a small teddy bear in one hand and clutched Mary's soft shawl in the other. Outside, the stars twinkled like promises. Mary whispered a prayer before she went to bed. "God, let me raise him into something great." And God listened. The days that followed were filled with healing and discovery. Elijah had never lived in a house so big. Every corner was a wonder: soft rugs, wide windows, the smell of cinnamon tea in the mornings. But what amazed him most wasn't the size or the furniture. It was Mary. She never scolded him for limping. She never sighed in frustration. Instead, she clapped every time he tried to walk a little faster. She cooked with him beside her. She told him bedtime stories that made him laugh. Mary also noticed his curiosity. He watched people run on television with sparkling eyes. Races. Sprinters. He didn't say it, but she could tell he wanted to run too. So one morning, she brought him to the backyard. It was a beautiful space with green grass and flower beds. "We'll start slow," she said with a wink. "One step at a time." She held his hand, and they walked a few feet. His legs trembled, but Mary never let go. Day after day, they repeated the same thing. Claudine sometimes stood at the window and clapped. Elijah started smiling more. At night, he began to whisper dreams to his teddy bear. "One day I'll run so fast, the world won't believe I had weak legs," he said one night, curling under his warm blanket. Mary, listening from the hallway, wiped a tear from her eye. "Yes, you will," she whispered to herself. "You'll run, Elijah. You'll fly." Elijah's legs grew stronger with every sunrise. Mary hired a gentle physiotherapist named Mr. Duncan, who visited twice a week. He was patient, encouraging, and always brought a small ball for Elijah to kick. "Strength lives inside you," Mr. Duncan would say. "You just have to find it." Elijah was determined. He practiced walking longer distances each day. He fell, but he always got up. Mary clapped. Claudine cheered. Even the gardener smiled proudly as Elijah made his slow laps around the yard. One day, Mr. Duncan brought a stopwatch. "Let's time you," he grinned. Elijah's eyes lit up. From that day on, Elijah's walks became timed sprints. He laughed as the wind brushed his face and his heart raced. Though his steps weren't perfect, they were powerful. Inside him, something was blooming, something fiery, something unstoppable. Mary saw it. She sat in her rocking chair every afternoon, watching him move across the grass. Her heart swelled with pride. "Elijah," she said one day, calling him over. He jogged to her with a wide grin. "Would you like to train, for real?" He looked confused. "Running, my darling. Competitive running." Elijah's eyes widened. "You think I can?" Mary smiled and cupped his face. "I don't think, I know." That night, Elijah barely slept. His heart danced with hope. The boy once left in the market was now dreaming of medals, races, and roaring crowds. He didn't know it yet, but greatness had already begun to rise inside him. Training began early every morning. Mary enrolled Elijah in a youth athletic club known for nurturing young talent. The coach, Mr. Wallace, was a tall man with a booming voice and a kind heart. When he first saw Elijah run, he raised an eyebrow, not because of his limp, but because of his fire. "He's got something rare," Mr. Wallace told Mary after the first week. "He's not the fastest, yet. But his spirit is unmatched." Elijah loved it. The track felt like freedom. He trained harder than anyone else. Rain or shine, he showed up. The other kids noticed too. They no longer saw him as the boy with the limp, but as the one who never quit. Mary watched from the stands with tears in her eyes. Every lap Elijah completed reminded her of the day she found him, fragile and forgotten. Now he was strong, bold, and chasing dreams. At home, his medals began to fill a shelf. Small ones at first, school races, district relays, but each one mattered. Elijah didn't care about winning. He cared about proving that he could. One evening, after a tough workout, Elijah collapsed on the grass, panting. Mary walked over with a bottle of water. "Do you know how proud I am of you?" she asked. Elijah looked up at her, eyes shining with sweat and joy. "I'm not running away from my past," he said. "I'm running toward my future." Mary smiled. And the world had no idea what was coming next. One day, a scout from the national junior team visited one of Elijah's races. The boy ran like lightning, crossing the finish line seconds before the others. The scout clapped slowly, eyes wide. "He's not just good," he whispered to Mr. Wallace. "He's world class." By the following week, Elijah received an official invitation to train with the national team. Mary couldn't stop crying. "This is your dream," she told him, cupping his cheeks. "Go. Fly." Elijah hugged her tightly. "Only if you're with me every step of the way." But far across town, in a quiet, broken-down apartment, Kimberly sat watching the news. Her heart stopped as Elijah's face filled the screen. "Uriah," she gasped, calling her husband. "It's him. Elijah. He's alive." Uriah walked in, stunned by the image of the strong, joyful young man they once left behind. Their past was coming back, faster than they ever expected. Guilt weighed on Uriah like a heavy coat. "We did him wrong," he muttered. "We were selfish. I didn't think he'd survive, but look at him." For days, they watched every news report, every highlight, every race. Elijah's name was everywhere now. He was being called the fastest teen runner in the Caribbean. Kimberly made a decision. "We need to find him. Ask for forgiveness." Uriah hesitated. "And what if he doesn't forgive us?" "We still have to try." Meanwhile, Elijah trained harder than ever. The national coach loved him. His discipline, his focus, it was unmatched. He was no longer the boy with the limp. He was a symbol of hope. One day after training, Elijah found Mary waiting with an envelope. "These people came by," she said carefully. "They say they're your parents." Elijah froze. His hands trembled slightly as he opened the letter. "We're sorry. Please let us see you. We made a mistake." He looked at Mary. His voice was calm. "I don't want to see them." And with that, he turned away. "Elijah, why won't you forgive them?" "Elijah, don't you believe in second chances?" He kept his head high and stayed silent. One morning, Kimberly and Uriah showed up at his track meet uninvited. They stood at the edge of the crowd, holding a sign that read, "We're sorry, Elijah. We love you." He saw them. The crowd saw them. But Elijah didn't flinch. When the starting gun fired, he ran like the wind, faster than he ever had. The roar of the stadium drowned out everything else. When he crossed the finish line, the crowd erupted. He glanced once toward Kimberly and Uriah. Then he turned his back and walked away. Mary was waiting with open arms. "You've already won," she whispered. "Not just the race, but your life." With his past behind him, Elijah focused on the future. Mary's unwavering support gave him the strength to train harder, dream bigger, and push past every limit. The national team invited him to international meets, and soon, his name was whispered in stadiums across the world. Each race was a step toward the dreams he had whispered to his teddy bear years ago, running fast, breaking records, inspiring others. Mary followed him everywhere, her heart swelling with pride every time he crossed a finish line. She saw not just an athlete but a young man who had transformed pain into power. Despite the pressure, Elijah remained humble. He often spoke to young kids with disabilities, telling them their challenges didn't define them. One afternoon, after a grueling practice, Elijah sat with Mary on a bench overlooking the track. "Do you think they'll ever truly understand what I went through?" he asked quietly. Mary smiled, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "Some people never will, but you've already proven that your worth isn't tied to their opinions." Elijah nodded and looked at the sky, imagining the finish line of his next race. Suddenly, a phone buzzed in Mary's purse. She glanced at the screen and gasped. "Elijah," she said carefully. "Your mother and father have made a public apology." They want to meet you, on live television. Elijah's heart pounded. The race was no longer just on the track. It was about facing his past, his pain, and his power. The morning news buzzed with one headline everywhere. Famous runner Elijah faces birth parents on live TV. Elijah sat silently in his training room, the weight of the upcoming interview pressing down on him like never before. Mary sat beside him, holding his hand gently. Remember, this is your moment, not theirs. Speak your truth. The studio lights were bright and the cameras unblinking. Kimberly and Uriah sat on one side, nervously clutching each other's hands. Elijah sat across, calm but firm. The host began, Elijah, your birth parents have asked for forgiveness publicly. How do you respond? Elijah's eyes scanned their faces, faces that once abandoned him in a market, faces that ignored his cries. I grew up without you, he said quietly but with strength. I was left alone when I was most vulnerable. My legs didn't stop me, but your absence did. Kimberly's voice cracked as she whispered, we're so sorry, Elijah. Uriah nodded, tears falling. We were wrong. Elijah looked directly at them. I forgive no one for my past. I forgive myself for rising above it. The studio fell silent. Then Elijah stood. I am not the boy you left behind. I am the man I chose to become. He walked off the stage, leaving Kimberly and Uriah to face their regrets alone. Mary embraced him backstage. You spoke like a champion today. Because you are one. And Elijah knew. Some victories were not measured in medals but in standing tall despite the scars. After the televised confrontation, Elijah's story touched millions. Messages of support flooded his social media. Fans admired his courage, not just on the track but in life. He became a symbol of strength for many who had faced abandonment or hardship. Yet, despite the fame, Elijah struggled with anger and sadness. The scars of his childhood still ached beneath his success. He found solace in running early every morning before the world awoke, just him, the track, and the rising sun. Mary remained his rock. One evening, as they sat watching the stars, Elijah opened up for the first time since the interview. Mary, sometimes I wonder if I'm too hard on them, but then I remember how it felt to be left behind. Mary nodded. It's okay to feel anger, Elijah. Healing doesn't mean forgetting, it means making peace with the past so it doesn't control your future. Elijah sighed, I want to be free. Mary smiled softly. Then keep running, not from them, but toward your own happiness. Inspired, Elijah decided to start a foundation to help abandoned and disabled children. He wanted to give them hope, just like Mary had given him. With every step, every race, Elijah wasn't just running for himself anymore. He was running for all the forgotten children who deserved a second chance. Elijah's foundation, Steps of Hope, grew quickly. He used his story to inspire children with disabilities and those who had been abandoned, offering them hope and support. With Mary's help, he raised money to build centers that provided therapy, mentorship, and a sense of belonging. His days were filled with training, speeches, and visits to children who looked up to him like a hero. One day, Elijah returned to the marketplace where his life had nearly ended. Standing near the stall where he was once left, he felt no anger, only strength. Speaking to a group of wide-eyed children, he said, your beginning doesn't define your end. Mary stood beside him, proud as ever. You're changing lives, she whispered. Elijah smiled. Because you changed mine. He knew then, his real victory wasn't medals or fame. It was becoming the man he needed when he was 5. Time passed, but Elijah's fire never dimmed. He continued running, speaking, and healing. Steps of Hope reached more towns, and more children began to believe in possibilities. Elijah's story became a light in the darkness. At the grand opening of a new center, Elijah stood beside Mary. Cameras flashed, but he focused on the children, their eyes filled with dreams. One boy asked, can I run like you? Elijah smiled and knelt. Yes. Start with belief. Later that evening, Elijah looked up at the stars, remembering his journey, from the market floor to the world stage. He had faced rejection, pain, and doubt, yet turned it all into power. He glanced at Mary and whispered, thank you for choosing me. She squeezed his hand. You were never a burden. You were a blessing. Elijah took a deep breath, ready for the next race, not just on the track, but in life.